It's Miss C, your favorite global teacher, here with another recap. This is just a super quick disclaimer. These are not my opinions. This is not how I feel. These are the topics that you need to know in order to pass the New York State Global History Regents. So today's topic is Enlightenment happens during the age of absolutism. So the historical circumstances is going to be the age of absolutism. But the Enlightenment time period is a period where people start questioning tradition. Why does the absolute monarch have 100% power? Why do the people not have any rights or freedom? Why does the king limit people's freedoms? And people are no longer going to be satisfied with divine right. They're even going to start questioning divine right. Like, how does God choose kings? Like, I don't know about you, but I've never seen God in the physical form. So how did he come down here and choose this king? The church is corrupt. These priests are corrupt. Nobody is helping the people. The people no longer are going to be satisfied with the absolute monarch as being their leader. The new way of thinking is really coming from philosophers. Philosophers came up with all different thoughts that went against tradition, and there's 4 different philosophers that I have seen asked on the regents, so I want to go through them with you. The first, the father of Enlightenment, John Locke. John Locke is British. He says that people are born with natural rights like certain freedoms and rights that the government can't take away from you. So freedom of speech, freedom of property. And he also says that if the leader goes against their natural rights, or if the leader limits people's rights and freedoms, then they have the right to rebel against the government. So obviously that is going to be a cause of the age of revolutions that comes after Enlightenment, because everyone's going to start rebelling everywhere. The second Enlightenment philosopher that I have seen ask on the regents is Voltaire. Voltaire believes in freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And the third philosopher, Montesquieu. Montesquieu believed that there should be a separation of powers in the government. One person shouldn't have 100% control over everything. Therefore, there should never be an absolute monarch. And the fourth philosopher that I have seen asked on the regents is Rousseau. Rousseau, his idea is that there is something called a social contract. The social contract is between the people and the leader, and there needs to be some sort of agreement, because a contract is an agreement. So the agreement is that the people should listen to the leader, as long as the leader is respecting and treating the people right. There needs to be this respect relationship, this understanding between leader and the people that are being led. And if somebody goes against the contract, then they have the right to rebel. Now, obviously, leaders are unhappy with this, but it's like, do you ignore it? Can you just ignore it? You know, people gossip, word spreads. Even if you ban it in your empire, word spreads. People are going to find out about Enlightenment. There's going to be illegal meetings and illegal smuggling of books and stuff like that. So absolute monarchs had to really take a stance on how they were going to receive Enlightenment. So some absolute monarchs, called enlightened despot monarch, enlightened, trying to do enlightenment things, try to incorporate some enlightenment into their empire. Catherine the Great is an example of an enlightened despot, and really one of the only examples of enlightened despots that I've seen asked on the regions. And Catherine the Great is from Russia. She was actually really good friends with Voltaire. Voltaire was in Russia for quite some time because he wasn't allowed in half of Europe. But remember, Voltaire believes in what? Freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So obviously she listened to her friend Voltaire, and she allowed for freedom of religion. However, she did not allow for freeing the serfs, emancipating or freeing of the serfs. Serfs are the peasants or the workers that came with the land you own. So they were at the bottom of the social class. They had no power. They were treated as slaves. And she refused to free them. So, and that's what enlightened despots did. They pick and chose which enlightenment ideas they wanted to use and which ones they didn't want to use. So she didn't give freedom and rights. There was no natural rights for serfs. She didn't agree with John Locke, you know, but she gave freedom of religion. So is she really doing something? You know, you can't pick and choose what rights you want to give and leave the others out. You can't believe that people are born with natural rights, but then still have slaves. It's just not going to work. You know what I'm saying? So enlightened despots, fail. One very important enlightenment document coming out of enlightenment besides John Locke's book, which the regents may ask about, we'll see that in a multiple choice question, is the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Like, it's in the name itself, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So obviously it's going to be a list of rights that the people should have and deserve. And it's going to influence many revolutions to start, like the French Revolution. Now, obviously, Enlightenment inspired many different movements, like the Age of Revolutions, like the French Revolution, Latin American revolutions, where people are fighting for their freedom against their unjust leaders. Another effect of Enlightenment was the rise of women's rights movements. The Regents does, and I have seen it, ask about Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft, she's British. She is one of the leaders of the women's rights movements in the early 1800s. And she stated that women should have the right to an education. She doesn't deny the traditional role that women should play, be mothers, be wives, take care of the home, but allow me to get an education. Now, let's end during issue talk, right? Enlightenment is impact of ideas and beliefs, right? Because the ideas that the philosophers were spreading influence the people to start revolutions. So it's a 100% impact of ideas and beliefs. We can also say desire for power, because the people want some power. The absolute monarchs are denying power, not giving the people rights. So definitely desire for power. An issue that we can attach is modernization versus tradition. Such an underused, enduring issue, but applies to so many different time periods. Obviously, Enlightenment philosophers are going against the traditional mindset that the absolute monarch has all of the power. You know, like the people are just like little puppets of the absolute monarch controlling them. Now, if we're looking at this multiple choice set, remember for every one document, there are 2 questions. We see the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Declaration of the Rights of Women. Right? So the Declaration of the Rights of Women comes a little later, but both obviously, if we look at these documents, all of them start with rule of law, rule of law, rule of law, what the law should be towards the people in regards to rights. So if we look at this multiple choice question, just by kind of process of elimination, we can also get to our answer. But if I just had rule of law, which answer has rule of law in it? It's the first one, you know, so that is definitely going to be our answer. And social contract, like social contract, Montesquieu, like they put in these little enlightenment terms that you're expected to come into the exam knowing. And if you know that Montesquieu is enlightenment, then you know rule of law, social contract, that's going to be your answer. And obviously, if we're looking at the second question, it's going to influence the French Revolution. 100%, because people are going to want these freedoms that are laid out in these documents. Asking what issue was debated in the reading, well, we know she didn't emancipate or free the serfs. You know what I'm saying? We already know that. So let's go up in the reading and see, is it talking about serfs at all? And first line, serfs. You know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't you pick that answer? And if we're looking at the second question, what claim can we make about this reading? Well, it's obviously going to be number 1, the idea that like changes are not easy. Like her nobles gave her a lot of pushback on it. She had to pay them off, like, and that's in the reading. So change is not easy, although she wanted to make certain changes. She was restricted because her nobles, her rich friends often did not agree with her. So the answer in this case is number one. And if we're looking at this John Locke short answer question, remember short answers are CRQ sets. This is the first document in the CRQ set. There are 2 documents, 3 questions. The first document is always historical circumstances, and this is a John Locke excerpt. So obviously the historical circumstances leading to this book, well, there's like 2 answers that would fit well. You could say the age of absolutism, because the absolute monarchs are not giving the people freedom, which led to philosophers like John Locke starting to question, why don't people have rights? People do deserve rights. Or you can say the historical circumstances leading to this document is Enlightenment, the time period where philosophers start to question the absolute monarchs, the power of the church, all of that tradition. So either answer would work well. Thank you for slaying global with me. Bye.